for your love and your care and your patience. This morning, as we look at how to effectively serve you more, Lord, give us wisdom. Give us the knowledge. Give us the ability to do your work effective with quality. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. I'd like to start with a movie. See if I can make it work here. Okay. Will this mic work? See if I can make it work.
And cars.
Can you hear that?
But due to budget limitations, there were no stop signs.
We just keep going. Pedal to the meadow.
Not surprisingly, traffic accidents were common.
Look out!
Cars crashing into each other at nearly every intersection.
Did I do that? Oh boy.
As the population of Alapath grew, traffic accidents increased to an alarming level.
I've been in another accident. That's 3 a day.
Out of desperation, City Council hired Dr. West, the doctor of the motor division, MD, to find a solution. Dr. West spent days examining traffic accidents on an hourly rate. I see. Looks lucrative. Must analyze. The townspeople of Alapath watched on with great curiosity while Dr. West went about his work.
This guy's good. What's he doing?
After weeks of investigations, Dr. West called the people of Alapath to a town meeting for release of his report.
Here it is. Traffic accidents are caused by skid marks. I have found and documented a near 100% correlation between traffic accidents and skid marks.
Oh.
This town has skid marks disease. Why didn't I think of that?
I would have thought of it with my brain.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
That's fantastic. And it's good, too.
The city paid Dr. West his consulting fee, then asked the good doctor to propose a method for treating this skid marks disease.
I recommend a particular chemical coating, Teflon.
Teflon.
Teflon! Oh! No, Teflon!
The city immediately placed a large order with the chemical company that manufactured Rhodoceuticals. Within weeks, the streets were completely coated and the skid marks all but disappeared. But things weren't well in that. Traffic accidents were brutal. Hospital beds were overflowing with injured residents. The town economic advisor, observing the sharp increase in economic activity, announced that Alapath was booming. Times are good.
Things are great, except that we're getting creamed.
But the traffic accidents continued to increase. And yet, there were no solutions.
What again? It keeps happening. I thought we had this figured out.
We've got to get to the bottom of this.
Well, the city council was baffled. They thought they had solved this problem.
You said it!
They called a town meeting, and following a short discussion of the problem,
Who's that old guy?
an old hermit who lived in the forest just outside Alapath addressed the townspeople.
Who's that old guy?
There's no such thing as skid marks disease. No skid marks disease? Outrageous. This disease was invented by the Rhodoceuticals company to sell you Teflon coatings. That's crazy talk. This is a simple problem. All we need to do is build stop signs and traffic lights. Then the traffic accidents will cease.
Crazy.
You must take up the Teflon. That's a lunatic.
He's a nut. A big nut.
Preposterous.
The townspeople were horrified to hear such a statement.
Personally, I'm horrified to hear such a statement.
They knew skid marks disease existed. Dr. West had told them so. But what may happen if stop signs actually work?
How will that affect our booming economy in Alapath?
It was at that moment that most of the townspeople realized their own jobs were at stake. If stop signs were built, nearly everyone would be unemployed.
Yeah, what about them?
We'll all lose our livelihood.
had jobs in emergency response services, car repair shops, hospitals, and Teflon coating maintenance. It was important that everyone continued to believe that skid marks disease was the cause of the accidents. Out of fear of losing this economic prosperity, the townspeople voted to create a new public safety agency, the Frequent Drivers Association. The FDA's board members were chosen from among the business leaders of the community, the owner of the car shop, the owner of the ambulance company, and, of course, Dr. West. Soon after its inception, the FDA announced that skid marks disease was indeed very real.
Skid marks, boss!
People with those stop signs are flagged.
Pay the cost.
This pleased the townspeople of Allapath. With the FDA, they knew their jobs were safe. They still had a lot of traffic accidents, but at least their jobs were secure. And so life continued in Allapath. For a short while, at least. As traffic accidents continued at a devastating rate, more and more residents of Allapath were injured. Many were left unable to work due to their injury. In time, population dwindled. The once booming town of Allapath eventually became little more than a ghost town. No one was any healthier or happier or longer lived. And the hermit? He outlived every single resident of Allapath. In his spare time, he constructed stop signs, waiting for the next population to come along and hoping they might listen to an old hermit with a crazy idea.
And that so-called crazy idea is simply this. The mere treatment of symptoms is not the answer. When it comes to your health and well-being, looking and feeling younger, avoiding diseases, increasing your energy, and living a long and fulfilling life, prevention and real cure are the only real answer.
Have I showed that here before? Is that not true?
Is it happening?
Yeah. Who's heard of Dr. McCullough? Yes, I contacted his office several years ago, and I said, I'd really like to share this. Could I have permission? And they said, sure. So every once in a while I have an opportunity, I share it. Let's see. I thought I had enough on my battery. I better give it some extra juice just in case. But isn't it interesting how we can get caught up in a system, believing as your wife talked about yesterday, believing the letters behind the name, believing where the money comes. Where's the revenue? Who's ever watched, let's see, was it What the Health? Did anybody watch What the Health? Was it that one that they went to the hospital and they asked them if they could interview them? They said no, this would interfere with revenue production, and we don't want to have anything to do with that. Yeah, wow. Well, this morning we're here to talk about something much more serious. And that is how to develop a medical missionary program. I need one more thing here. We'll just do it this way. So I'll review a few slides from yesterday because it's all interconnected. And coming from corporate America, I'm a big mission person. Joint Commission is someone who comes in and looks at healthcare, and they like to know what your mission is. So all of my staff had name tags, and on the back of the name tags, I printed our mission. So when Joint Commission came, and because they will ask your staff, what is the mission of this institution? What is the mission of this institution? The staff are supposed to know what that mission is. And so I taught the staff to say, when they were asked, I would love to share that with you. Let me read it to you. And so, boom, they had it right there to read to them. And mission is important because many times we can go down rabbit trails and we forget what our mission is. Can that happen to a church? Can that happen to a person? I get asked quite often by folks wanting to go to nursing school, to medical school, and they ask, what is your recommendation? And I'll tell them, we need good nurses. We need good doctors. We need them. But two things to consider. One is when you get there, will you get disillusioned? Because they're really good at teaching what they teach. Number two, if you want to do medical missionary work and you want to get your degree, how are you going to pay for it when you get out? Especially if you go into medicine. If you go into medical missionary work. Because I tell you, there's a huge disparity in what I made before and what I make now. There's just a big difference. And it's all based on what your mission is. What is my mission? Is it to make money? Then I made a mistake 22 years ago. I should have stayed where I was. You make a lot more money. But I don't believe I made a mistake because I believe in this mission. I changed my mission 22 years ago. And so you want to look at what does God have you to do? And again, yesterday we talked about what is your ultimate mission? What's our ultimate mission? Eternity with Christ. Yeah. And I don't know what that's going to be like. This is really cool. Do you like cool things? This is really cool. So I'm at ASI. I'm eating breakfast one of the mornings, and I'm sitting there with this man, and he's an astronomer. And he says, I got to show you something really cool. So he brings out his computer, and he says, this picture came out in January from NASA. He says, you know where Orion is? Sure. He says, well, there's this big cloud just south of Orion, just below, maybe not south, but he said below Orion. And there's this big cloud. And he says, we've watched this dark place in there for many years, and we just thought it was a shadow. And he said, NASA with I forgot the kind of telescope they were using, a new type of telescope. They were able to find out it wasn't a shadow. It was a tunnel. A tunnel. And then he said, this is what's really cool. From east to west. Now this is so let's say this is the whole shadow. The little shadow might be like my hand in this huge shadow. From this side of the shadow to this side of the shadow, guess how many miles it was apart? A trillion miles. A trillion miles. That's just incredible. And we're going to have eternity to explore that. Now, how fast are we going to be able to go? I don't know. But that's just the vastness of the universe. And what is heaven going to be like? You know? I've been to Hawaii a number of years ago, went there for a convention when I worked in regular health care. Mrs. White said it was the closest thing she saw to heaven while here on earth. And I'm sure Hawaii is nothing today like what it was when she was there. But can you imagine what it's going to be like? What is your mission? Is your mission to to get another advancement at work? Is your mission to get your garden in? Well, yes, but not your ultimate mission. You need a real ultimate mission. And then, based on that ultimate mission, what's our mission now? What do we want to do? We should ever remember that the object of the medical missionary work is to point sin-sick men and women to the man of Calvary, who taketh away the sin of the world. If you want to be a medical missionary to reverse diabetes, you're going in it for the wrong thing. If you're going to want to be a medical missionary to make money, you definitely are going into it for the wrong thing. It's to point the sin-sick men and women to the man of Calvary. Physical healing is bound up with the gospel commission. The work of the gospel, teaching, and healing are never to be separated. So if you're helping someone with diabetes, you got another hat you're wearing. How can you weave the gospel in helping that person with diabetes? If you're working with a person with a wound, how can you weave the gospel with that wound? Shall I tell the story I was telling you last night about the horse? And it's not just people you can work with to spread the gospel. A couple weeks ago, a lady comes in on a Thursday. She's upset. She had been crying, and that morning her horse had gone down, and it wasn't eating, wasn't drinking, it was laying down. Now, horses not being able to stand is not a good thing. And the vet came and told her, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. The eyes were totally red. The horse would not eat, drink, or get up. And it had eaten some type of branches from a tree. Now, it wasn't the cherry tree. I know the cherry's poisonous, but I forgot which tree it was. But it's poisonous, according to the vet. And so she had just lost a horse recently before, just not long before. And so she went back to work. She works in healthcare. She had to go into the office for something, and she was telling the girls at work, and they said, go down and see if Walt can help you with something on your horse. So she left and came down. And she says, is there anything? And so what do you first do? You pray. Yeah, you pray. You know, God, is there something we can do to the horse? Does God love horses? Do horses mean something to people? Do they? Can you get to somebody by helping their horse? Absolutely you can. You can their dog and their cat. And so we prayed. And I said, let me tell you a story. So I told her a story about how my two goats got into rhododendron. Y'all don't have rhododendron up here, do you? Oh, does it grow here? Does it grow here? Rhododendron? No? It's I thought more of an Appalachian mountain thing. And it's poisonous. It's poisonous to people. My dad taught me when I was a boy, don't mess with the rhododendron, don't mess with mountain laurel. It'll kill you. And so he'd learned that from his mama and his daddy. And so I just knew, you don't get it and eat on it or anything. So my goats had gotten into it, and the vet said they'd die, and an old doc friend of ours came over, and we gave activated charcoal, and the goats lived. And the vet, I later told the vet, and he goes, that's right, they told us that in vet school. I forgot about that. And then my nanny, she didn't learn, and we had to do it again 2 weeks later. So I told the story to the lady, and I said, would you like to try charcoal? She says, oh, yeah. The vet said it's dying. Yeah, let's try it. So we adjusted the calculation from a pygmy goat to, she said, 1,000-pound horse. And I said, be careful. You don't want it to aspirate. And pray when you give it the charcoal that God will bless and that God will heal. And she came back the next day really excited. The horse was standing. The horse was eating a little. The horse was drinking a little. And the eye color now was typical jaundice look instead of just blood red. And the vet said, Well, she called the vet, and the vet goes, he thought she was calling to say it was dead, and he couldn't believe it was alive. And he said, that was great. And then he said, well, it's got liver issues. And so she came over, and she says, what do you have for liver issues? And I said, well, I don't know about horses. I use it for dogs, and you got to be careful. Different animals are different. And I said, I use milk thistle and dandelion root. But I don't know if a horse, you can do that for a horse. You need to ask your vet. So she calls the vet, and while she was there at the office, and he said, well, you can do it for a horse, but you can't for a cow. It'll kill a cow. Well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. And see, you can't just go hog wild just doing whatever. You gotta research stuff. You can't just go using poke. You can kill somebody. And so you've got to protect. You can use poke, but you have to use it properly, or it's poisonous if you don't. So he said, yes, you can use the dandelion root, and you can use the milk thistle. So we did the math again, and she carries out bottles of 1 ounce bottles of milk thistle to meet the 100-pound need. She calls me Monday, and she says, my horse is in pasture. It's eating, drinking, eyes are great. And the horse is still, I talked to her since, horse is doing great. And I kept telling her, it is God that does the healing. See, it is not to be separated. You just don't work on that sick horse. You also teach. It's never, because it is not you doing the work. It is not the milk thistle, it's not the charcoal. It is God blessing that. It is God that's doing the healing. Because if you think it is you, you will fall on your nose and you'll bust it. Because it is not you. It's not. The goal of health ministry work is not a one-time event. The goal of the health ministry work is not a one-time event. It is to develop individual relationships through multiple exposures over time in order to gain trust, healing, and the introduction of the individual to Christ's love and salvation. That is our goal. If you think it's just a one-time event where you just pass out literature, yes, I believe in literature evangelism. My father was a literature evangelist for many years. I went out and did many, many books as a child and handed out a lot of literature. But I really see the effectiveness is over time, developing a relationship, building that trust, working with that individual. And if a person comes to you with diabetes, it is much more effective to take their hand and work through that process than just to hand them the information and say goodbye and hope and pray that they will comply. Because, as you know, compliance is a challenge. People need encouragement. They need their hands held. And it is through developing that relationship that we even have more exposure to share Christ's love. Because that's what we're after. It is not something, health fairs are great, but a health fair is a way to have more classes. It might be, we're having smoothie classes. Would you like to learn how to make smoothies? Now, smoothies are probably one of the easiest classes to have. It's just 1 + 1 + 1. I teach kids your age, younger than your age. I go into the school system, and I take my blenders, and I teach them to make smoothies. Smoothies are simple. 1 frozen banana, 1 cup of milk, and I teach them almond milk, and one cup of frozen fruit. It might be a cup of strawberries, or it may be a half a cup of strawberries and a half a cup of blueberries. Now that is not really tweaking it, but that's the basic. That's simple. You may tweak and use a little less milk and a little more of this or whatever, and that's not a highfalutin smoothie like Mary Lou makes that's really good. But it's a smoothie, and it ain't bad. and you can teach people. And then you can even teach highfalutin smoothies. But that health fair is a way to get them to other programs, not a one-time event. Is not the goal. Who's responsible? The medical missionary work should be a part of the work of every church in our land. We talked several years ago about God's systematic healthcare system, and it is the church that is the hub, should be. And then around that church, you've got the church as the local hub of the medical missionary program. You've got members, you've got clinics, you've got health food stores, you got a restaurant, you got the local elementary school, you got the local CSA. You know what a CSA is? You know, the gardening program. You've got local farmers that are selling to maybe to the health food store. You know, it's a whole system that God set up for the medical missionary program. And then, yes, we have our lifestyle programs outside of the city. We've got our education programs where we're teaching the higher education. We've got, you know, it's a whole system. Problem is, it's hard to get everybody working together. The goal is the whole system. But you take what you can get. And that's what we're looking at this morning. But if you have a church that is willing to be compliant and be the hub, that's what it should be. And every church should have an active program. God wants ministers and church members to have a decided, active interest in the medical missionary work. We have come to a time when every member of the church should take hold of the medical missionary work. The members of the church are in need of an awakening, yet they may realize their responsibility to impart these truths. Those who have been enlightened by the truth are to be light bearers to the world. To hide our light at this time is to make a terrible mistake. The message to God's people today is arise, get up, shine, for the light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. Just don't talk about it. Get up and do something. We can talk all day long till the cows come home. But arise, he says. Get up. Do medical missionary work. Do medical missionary work. Thus you will gain access to the hearts of the people. The way will be prepared for a more decided proclamation of the truth. You will find that relieving their physical suffering gives an opportunity to minister to their spiritual needs. Yesterday, the question came, so what do you do if your local church is not interested? What do you do if your local conference does not support this? What do you do if your union doesn't support this? I was talking to a man just recently. He's having a very successful medical missionary program. Very successful. And it's part of their church ministry. But the union has found out about it and is saying it's strange things. They're calling what they're doing strange things. The problem is we have a medical school there. And it's strange things to what they're teaching in the medical school. Though Duke University has been doing it since 1934. 1934, Duke University has been doing this. UT Pine has been doing it for many years. Lifestyle Centers of America, when it was going, was doing it. But yet it's strange things to the medical school. Therefore, the union is going, we don't know if you should be doing this. The union, not the conference, the union. And the man says, what do I do? I said, what has God asked you to do? Do what God has asked you to do. And a lot of times, you know, the church likes to promote things. They like to promote this program, this program, this program, this program. And if we're doing a program, we like to be promoted. We're doing this and it's working. Other folks, you know, this is working here, go do it and do this and whatever, because it'd be done other places. If there's not that support, you're not going to get that promotion. Just go do it. Just go do it. We don't, you know, and it's great when we have the local church support. It's great when we have the organization support. You are not doing it. I am not doing it for the organization. When I moved back home, I moved to a church that had a hospital. And I say had a hospital. It got shut down. And I have a hypothesis why we're losing our hospitals. It's full of doctors, a large church, and they didn't want anything to do with me. Nothing. My own church. I would go and speak as this, but never in my church, because what I was teaching was against the movie you just watched. Because my church was that movie. Literally, I would be walking down the hall in church, and a church member would walk up and ask me what to do something, and doctors would come up and stand and listen to cause intimidation. See, I was messing with their patients. Nothing happened for years. Well, finally, the hospital closed. And then the doctor's patients were coming to Newport, and they'd go back up to where I live, and they would tell them about outcomes. I've been there now for almost 19 years, and the church now listens. But the organization has gone. It closed. It fell apart. You are not doing this for your glory. If you are, you need to do something else. And I found out real quick that sometimes you just don't stir the pot. I'm another county away from where I go to church, in a different town. And when Jesus told the disciples, go to Jerusalem first. But if they don't listen, what did he say? Dust your shoes off. So I dusted my shoes off. You may have to dust your shoes off. We are, yes, there to support our people and take care of our people. But if our people don't listen, there's another group of people out there that are needing to listen. And so it is so easy within the organization to want to be accepted. Yes? It is. But we are not back in high school. Go and do. And God will bless. You're working for God. You're not working for man. And I truly believe in supporting our organization, or I would not be on Seventh-day Adventist. But if they don't understand, then just go do what God tells you to do. And that's what you want to focus on. And do it well for God. The Lord will give you success in this work. It's a promise. If we do what He tells us, He will give us success. I mean, if God's there to take your hand, how can you say no? For the gospel is the power of God unto salvation, when it is interwoven with the practical life, when it is lived and practiced. The Lord will give you success in this work. So where do we start? You pray, pray, and pray. What would God have me to do? It is not what you want to do. People call me and they'll say, Walt, I want to move out of the city. Where do you recommend me to go? I don't know. Where does God want you to go? See, you don't leave the city just to go hide in the mountains. If you think you're going to hide in the mountains, you've made a huge mistake. You ain't been there before. when I moved back to Tennessee, I remember I joined the fire department, and because I joined the fire department wherever I go, it's a way I can help my local community. Been doing that since I was in college. And I remember sitting there one night, and this old man who helped start the fire department many years before, he looked at me and he said, "Is that old hemlock just below your cabin? Is it still putting out water?" And I live up on a mountain you don't see nobody. I said, "How you know about that hemlock?" He said, "Boy, I hunted that mountain my whole life. That's John's Mountain." And he lives on the other side, on the same mountain, but on the other side. But he'd hunted the side where I was his whole life growing up. He says, "Yeah, I know where that hemlock is. I've gotten water from that hemlock many years, and when I'm out hunting, before that cabin was ever there." I said, "No, sir, it's not." He said, "I didn't think so." He said, "We got a bad drought, worst drought I ever seen. And I wonder if that hemlock could be putting out water or not." Isn't that amazing? He knows that land better than I know that land, or did. He passed away. So if you think you're moving into the country to hide, they know you're coming. As soon as that truck drives through, and everybody knows it, and everybody talks. I remember I was at Walmart doing a boot drive for the fire department one day, and the constable, y'all have constables? Y'all, do you? Pardon? You have sheriffs. Well, we have sheriffs and constables. The constable is the guy who can arrest the sheriff. And the constable is a volunteer. Now, he's elected by the people, just like the sheriff is elected by the people. And so it gives him the power to arrest the sheriff, because he's been elected by the people. So this constable comes up to me. He said, "Walt," he said, "I just wanted to let you know there's going to be a mobile home coming up on the mountain. Someone's moving in, and it's going to be burned out when it gets there." It hadn't even got there yet, and he was already telling me it was going to be burned out. It was a drug dealer who was moving into our community, and the locals didn't want that coming in. And guess what? They set it on fire. So when people say, "Walt, where do I move?" You move to the country not to escape and hide right now. You move to the country to, yes, be away from the harmful effects of the city, to have the benefits of the country where your children are growing up in the flowers and the trees and the garden and the squirrels and the birds and all that nature gives us. But you're also moving to an area that you can spread the gospel. And you want to ask God, what community is right for my family and what community is right for me to spread the gospel? Because there are different cultures, different people, and you want to be put into an area that they will be receptive to you. And so, God, what would you have me to do? Not what I want to do. What's God want you to do? It's very important. God desires that now, as never before, the minds of the people shall be deeply stirred to investigate the great temperance question and the principles underlying true health reform. So if there's true health reform, there must be what? False health reform. And there is. There's things out there that people are doing that are plumb wrong. People go out there. Well, an example. When I got to Alaska several weeks ago, the preacher and his wife sat down with me to let me know what the condition was with certain issues. They're in tough financial situations. they're just, it's a different situation. I identified that yesterday. And he said, someone came in and said, if you don't do it this way, you're going to hell. You ain't going to heaven. Church members left. Multiple church members left. They said, if this is the kind of stuff you're bringing into us and my family, we ain't coming back. Well, it took a while to get these people back. He says, don't mess up again. There are people out there who are a bull in a china closet, even with the right hand. And they will tell people, if you don't change the way you're eating, you're going to hell. That is not the way to talk to people. It is not. In my community where I am, if you go in and tell some feller that biscuits, you got to quit eating biscuits, and he comes in and he has high cholesterol. And you say, well, buddy, there ain't no, I'm not surprised. Look at what you're eating. You're eating biscuits and gravy, and you're eating hog jowl and chitlins, and you're eating bacon. What do you expect? It's killing you. Well, you just told that man in Appalachia his wife is killing him, and his mother was killing him, and his grandma was killing him, and he don't want nothing to do with you ever again. Culture. Know the culture. There are people who are out there and they're not doing medical missionary work right. There's people out there that may be doing non-allopathic work, and they might be doing some stuff that comes out of China. Now, I'm not saying everything comes out of China is wrong. They got some good medicine, but they got some stuff that just doesn't work with what we do. See, if I went, a good Chinese person would not want to listen to what I have to say, because I give credit to God. They give credit to something else. They work on a different spiritual level than we do. And some of their modalities work on a different spiritual modality, different spiritual method than what we do. And I get my power from God, and they get their power from something else. Be careful what they're using, because it comes from power from something else. Now, but be careful. Be wise. There's a church I went to one time, and the preacher picked me up in Detroit, and we drove up to his little church up in the country. And on the way, his wife decided to quiz me. She says, do you use essential oils? I do. She wouldn't come to any of the classes. I did. He came to some of them, but he let me know that that was New Age. And I said, sir, New Agers support water. I drink water. I said, sir, New Agers are vegans. Well, I'm not a vegan. I've got a leather belt. Vegans don't do no animals. I'm a whole food plant-based person. Vegans are whole food plant-based. New Agers. I said, just because I do something that a New Ager might use doesn't mean it's New Age. Let's look a little deeper. Essential oils are herbs. You can either take that herb and you can make a tea out of it. Who was it does red clover? Is it you that does red clover? You can just make red clover tea out of it. Or you can make an extract. Or you can distill it. Or you can press it and make an essential oil like peppermint, your favorite. 1 drop of peppermint essential oil has the same power medicinally as 28 cups of peppermint tea. It's just concentrated. There is nothing goofy about that. Nothing at all. But there are folks out there that says, oh, you can't do it. Essential oils.
Mary Magdalene, when she put the oil on Christ, spikenard.
That's right.
Essential oil.
It is. So, be careful. There's true and there's false. So how do you know? Well, what you do, I went to the bank one time. Took the money from work. Next day, the bank manager called me and she says, Walt, I need you to bring $100 up here. I said, why? She says, you brought me a fake one yesterday. I said, I used the pen on it. She said, Walt, bring me $100 and we'll talk. So I went on up there and I said, I brought you $100 yesterday and I marked it right here, and she showed it to me. She says, this is fake. And I said, well, I marked it right here and it turned the right color. She says, throw it away. She said, a counterfeiter can take counterfeit money and put a chemical on there that's in every one of y'all's houses. I won't say it because I'm on there. You can put that on there and it will make that pen turn that color. She says, throw that pen away. She says, what you do to tell if it's real, take your thumbnail and scratch right here. If it's rough, it is real. She said, then take something here like a tip of your pen or something and go underneath here and go underneath here and go underneath here. You can go underneath it. And she says, counterfeiters can't do that. And then she showed me, she says, yes, it's got that holograph thing there. You can look up in the light. But you study the real. And when you check the real, then when you see the counterfeit, you can tell it's counterfeit. So earlier this year, I took some money to the bank, and there was a new girl working at the bank, and she said, this is a counterfeit. And she gets all alarmed. And I said, no, ma'am, it's not. I work at the bank. This is a counterfeit. And I said, no, ma'am. And she said, the machine said it was a counterfeit. I said, I don't care. It's not a counterfeit. She says, how do you know it's not a counterfeit? I said, because the lady who used to be the manager here before she died, she told me how to check if it was real. That's a real $100 bill. I said, you got another machine over there, go stick it through that machine. So she run it through that machine. She come back, she goes, you're right, it's real. If you know the real, you know the real. Is that true? I don't care what a machine said.
I didn't know they were counterfeiting $100 bills, but I was at a Mexican restaurant the other day, and they showed me one, $100 bill, and it wasn't real. I was like, I didn't know they were doing $100 bills now.
Yes. So you know it by knowing what's true. So how do you know what's true? Ministry of Healing. But before that even, what's a good book to read? The Bible. Read Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Look at how Christ went out and did medical missionary work. Was he a bull in a china closet when working with people? No. Counsels and Diet Foods, real good book. I used to work with a lady in a ministry, and she was flying on an airplane somewhere across the country from Washington. She lived in New York City. She was flying across the country, and she was sitting. She was sitting in first class, flying along. And this man beside her pulls out this book and starts reading it. And she says, "Oh, you must be a Seventh-day Adventist." He goes, "No. Why do you say that?" And she says, "You're reading that book." He goes, "Oh, no. It's a great book, but no. That man's running for Congress or Senate right now. His name's Dr. Oz." She was sitting beside Dr. Oz and was reading this book. Yes?
It's ironic because yesterday, Brother Ross and I was talking about John McCarthy and some of his, the way he speaks and what he believes. So we were saying there's so many people who do read Sister White's writings and we don't even realize
Absolutely.
it. They're so accurate with what they're doing. We just spoke about that yesterday.
Yes.
They're saying the same thing today.
Yes.
Paul Harvey's wife is a Seventh-day Adventist.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, she was a Seventh-day Adventist.
Wow. That's
He would bring up the Sabbath every once in a great while.
when my dad was a call porter back in the 70s. Paul Harvey was the one that was on the little brochure that I wrote Dad's number down on. You know, how you write your number down for to when it gets mailed in. Yeah, he was on that. Oh, that's interesting. This is the first book I read on health that Mrs. White wrote. Temperance, Ministry of Healing. That book changed my career. I read that book and compared what I was doing in allopathic work to what Christ was doing there. The first third of the book is Christ's ministry. The next 2/3 is what we need to do. And I wasn't doing that at work. And that changed my career. Mind, Character, and Personality, 2 volumes. Excellent, excellent book if you want to figure out how to work with brain issues. Excellent book. This is a good book. It's called The Blueprint. So what do? You start with these books because these are the true. Then you can then move to books like this. This book here, it's called The Blueprint, and it's not for small medical missionary work. It's actually for how to do medical missionary work in the city, developing restaurants, health food stores, larger type of health ministry programs. But it's a great book. But does it match what these books said? Now, Dr. Thrash and I would go and speak, and this question would come up. How do I do medical missionary work? How do I get started? And I'd tell them, read the Bible, read the red books. That's what Mrs. White said, read the red books. Then, whether Dr. Thrash was sitting beside me or she was in the audience, I would say, then, after that, then you can read her books. And I say, am I correct, Dr. Agatha? And she would say every time, absolutely. Because if she did something wrong, she would want to be corrected. That's just how that lady was. Tremendous lady. And so based on what the Bible says, based on what the red books say, then you can start out and looking at, like, you can get this one at the ABC. It's written for ministry in New York City and California and whatever, in larger cities, how to develop programs. Natural Healing Practices by Dr. Thrash, very good book. Proof Positive by Dr. Neil Nedley. Let me see here. I thought I had a picture here. I don't. Let's see where. Well, maybe I'll come back across it. If I do, I'll share the story. Now, this is called the PDR. Now, this is not a book that most folks will recommend using, but I recommend having it as a reference because you need to know interactions with medications. What are some of the side effects of medication? We talked about that yesterday. Friday night we talked about it. If a person is having low energy, look at the meds that they're taking and see if that is a side effect. But this book, also by those people, do you have this book? That's a great book. You'd really enjoy it. Same guys, written the same way. Oh, you know what? I put the wrong one there. I grabbed the wrong book. That's the PDR Guide for Drug Interactions. That's another good book to have. But there's one PDR for herbal medicine. PDR, you have that one? No. That's a real good book. PDR for herbal medicine. And I grabbed the wrong picture there. And great book. When you work with medical people and they say, there's no science in what you're doing. Well, if you don't believe in PDR for herbal medicine, then you can't believe in this book because it's the same guys. Same research. And so it's a great book. Sorry, I apologize. I grabbed the wrong picture there. So, number one, identify your strengths. The first thing you do is you go out and you do medical missionary work. Number one, identify your strength. Whether it's the church or whether it's you solo. If you're working as a church, identify the church's strengths. But if it's you out solo, identify your strength. Identify the location. Physical plant. Whether it's the church's physical plant or your home's physical plant. At church, do you have a place for meetings? Do you have a fellowship hall? Do you have a kitchen? Do you have a place that someone can come in for meetings? Are there other locations in your area? A library, hospital boardroom. There was a church that I belonged to that the local community, for years ago, something happened. I don't know what it was. They didn't like Seventh-day Adventist. And so we just couldn't get people to come to the church for meetings. So I would schedule either at the library or at the hospital boardroom. We had evangelistic series. We'd spend $5,000, $7,000. Now that's not a lot of money for evangelistic series for most people. For our little church it was. That was a lot of money for us. And then have maybe one person show up. Never have a baptism. And we had some good people come in. Good evangelistic. No interest. But then we started having, so then I said, okay, let's try something. So for 1 year, we did no health outreach. Zero. No evangelistic meetings. Nothing. We focused all our energy on preparing ourselves. Every month, we'd spend a whole Sunday, all day, doing medical missionary training. It might be cooking schools, learning hydrotherapy, learning massage, learning herbs, just learning all kinds of modalities. So they had a whole year of 1 day a month. And then homework was that whole month after we trained. The next year, we started having health programs in the library, if it was cooking classes, or in the hospital boardroom, and it was a decent-sized boardroom, for just training other things. We, on average, would run 30 to 50 people coming to these meetings. The least we ever had was in the high 20s. People wanted to learn about health, but we had it at another safe location that people were willing to go to. And who did the teaching? Who did the teaching? Our church members. Not just wasn't just me or whoever. It was those members who we taught. They come up, and so when we'd do a cooking class, we'd start off and we'd have Henry do one, and Sally do one, and Susie do one, and Sissy do one. All the members came up and did different recipes to teach people, or teach different modalities and different treatments that we would do. We had their involvement. The whole church was in on this thing. It depends on your location. There's a church near us that the community truly believes that Seventh-day Adventists sacrifice goats. They truly believe it. There's a goat farm right next door to the church, and there's a bunch of goats right beside the church. And people just knew that's what they do over there. They sacrifice goats. It's not true, y'all, on the television here. You can go to fire departments. I've literally had churches invite me to come speak, and I would speak in the fire hall. They pull the fire trucks out and speak in the bays. It's a place to go. It's a safe place to go. People trust the fire department usually. You can go to schools. Ask if you can use a school to teach in, maybe the local community college or whatever. Just find out if you can't do it at your home, at your church. Is there other venues which you can do it at? There might be other locations also. Here we go. Also look at the advantages that you have living in the city, the advantages that you have living in the country, and take advantage of those advantages you have. See, in the city, there can be inner city situations that you can work with, certain needs and certain locations that you can go. Or in the country, the same way. Take advantage of what your venue is. Current personal strengths. Again, either the church or you individually. I encourage you, do not go and decide you're going to have a bread baking class and you've never cooked bread before. There are people who do that. They say, that would be great to do. Let me do that. And they don't even practice. They just show up to teach these people how to cook bread, and they've never even cooked bread before. Or a new recipe. Don't try a new recipe in front of people teaching a class. It might taste awful. Know what you're doing. Cooking is real easy for some people. My grandmother believed that boys should know how to do men's stuff, but also should know how to do ladies' stuff if they didn't have a wife, either before they got married or if something ever happened to their wife. My grandma taught me to cook, Southern style, not healthy. My grandma took me out and taught me how to fish. My grandma took me out and taught me how to shoot a gun. I mean, she taught me all kinds of stuff. She taught me to sew by hand. I was sewing by hand probably at 5. Yeah, I was 5 years old, sewing by hand, sewing buttons on by 5 years old. I started sewing with a sewing machine at 8 years old. And so she believed, and she did the same thing to my father, and she just felt that a man should be able to take care of himself if something happens to his wife or if he just hadn't got one yet. And but now I've never learned how to eat healthy cooking, and Mary Lou always said, stay out of the kitchen, that's my thing, you go do your own thing. And so she cooks healthy. Now she taught my boys. My boys are really good cooks, but I've just let her do her thing in the kitchen and enjoy what she does. But I do know how to make smoothies. Current personal strengths, athletic. Do you have a person that's athletic and can do classes on exercise? Someone who's athletic, well, that's more they have a knowledge. They look right for the job. You want someone that looks right for the job if you're going to do it, that they know what they're talking about, and have them do classes on different exercises. You may have medical folks, a physician, a nurse, physical therapist, pharmacist. We have a class this coming Tuesday night at our church. Things have changed over the last couple of years since that hospital went away. And we have a PhD or PharmD who will be teaching about herbs. And let me tell you what, the community's coming. They are so excited to come. I have these little brochures, and I'm a county away. And people are just taking those little brochures. They're going to go listen to this pharmacist, a doctor in pharmacy, talk about how to use herbs. She must know what she's talking about, they're saying. Well, she does. She does. Or maybe you have a massage therapist. Maybe you have a hydrotherapist. Maybe you have a health coach. Maybe you have an herbalist in your church. These are medical people. Medical, missionary work. See, we had doctors in the church saying, unless you have a medical degree, you cannot say you're medical missionaries. The word medical is only attached to medical degree. Well, is that true? Let's see here. I got my EMT many years ago, emergency medical technician. You have medical transcriptionist, medical secretaries. There's all kinds. So I went to the internet and I looked up. There's a huge list of job descriptions with the word medical, like a medical attorney who specializes in medical. I mean, it's a huge list. And so it can kind of squelch that sometimes if you're having that problem where you go to church. Because they will quickly tell you that this is the only one that falls under this. They might let this one play, but forget the rest. Well, no. Is a herbalist in medical? Are we medical? We're supposed to be medical missionaries. That's medical. It's okay to use that term. God said the medical missionary work is not to be, what? Divorced. God chose that word through inspiration. It's okay to use that word. Or you may have organizational skills. Maybe you can't boil water. And there's people like that. I remember my dietary director came to me one day, and she had a young girl. She was about your age. A little bit, maybe, no, she was about your age. And she just got married. And the dietary director said, I'm worried this girl's going to get a divorce. He's going to divorce her because she can't boil water. And I got to teach her. I said, we don't have money just to be out there teaching people. She says, I got to help this girl, please. I said, okay, bring her on if you can fit it in your budget. And let's see if we can help this girl. That girl couldn't do nothing. And that back then I wasn't eating healthy. And so I went back there. I tried to help her, cook eggs, make eggs for the patients. I tried to, when I'd slip back in there and just check on her. And because, this girl was a liability on me. She didn't have any skills in that department. And I couldn't just keep her on budget. And so I kept going back and checking on her. And I'd try to help her and try to help her make unhealthy milkshakes for the patients and this and that. We had to get rid of her. She had no skill at all. I don't know if that man kept her or not. She couldn't cook. She tried, but she just couldn't. What happened was her mother and father had been killed in an automobile accident when she was a young girl. And her grandmother raised her. And her grandmother felt sorry for her and never taught her to do anything. Never made her learn how to clean, to cook, nothing. Just spoilt the girl. And she just hadn't been trained. So you may have a person who's real good at organizational skills, but doesn't have these others. Can we use them in the medical missionary work? Yeah, we can. They can do bookkeeping. They can sit at the front desk and sign people in. See, we all have different skills. As we talked yesterday with the young man here, you have people who are roofers. You have people who are helpers that carries the shingles up the roof to the roofer. You've got your guy who's laying block, but you have his helper that's mixing the concrete. And you have all sorts of people within that scope of construction. You don't have contractors doing every bit of that work. In healthcare, we don't have doctors that are doing every part of the work. You've got housekeepers. You've got cooks. You have transcriptionists. You have guys in the lab. You have all these different, and the doctor can't do all them positions. Can you go back to the lab and run all those tests? No, you haven't been trained to. It's impossible, the way we've gotten in healthcare today, for one position to know all the positions' proficiency. Even in the medical field, they're specialists. And so it's not reasonable to say that this person here can do every bit of the work, because there's a lot to be done. And so you have people with different skills that you can use as medical missionaries. Identify the needs. What are the local needs? We had a saying in healthcare when we go into a new community. And that's what I mostly did, was going to dogs and fix dogs, be there for a couple years and go to another dog and fix the dog. Dog being a poor running healthcare institution, whether it was either patient care, financial, or both. And it was one of two problems. They either didn't have the systems, or three problems. Either they didn't have the systems, they didn't, two problems, or they didn't have employees doing the systems. They were just doing their own thing. And so the first thing you went in is put the systems in, the policies and procedures. And then you then ask the employees, are you willing to do it? If they're willing to do it, you can stay. If you're not willing to do it, I need to get somebody else. And so as you went into new communities, and I would go in, and they had a problem that people do, and they just, for marketing, go up and show, it was called show up and throw up. You just run in and say, here's all of everything we can do in our health institution, and this is what you need. No, that's not the way to do it. You go into that healthcare provider and you say, tell me, what needs do you have? How can we help your medical practice or your institution? What needs do you have that we can meet? That's a whole lot more effective than me coming in and telling you what you need. That doesn't work good. At least it doesn't work good in the South. We don't like being told what to do. That's why we were not very compliant over the last 2 years. This lady from New York Times came in, and she says, why is it that you people from Tennessee won't do anything? I said, because we don't like being told what to do, especially if you ain't from around here. So you go in and you find out what the local needs are. Ask your church members what their needs are. So see, there's a lot of possibility that the needs, health needs that your church members have could be also needs that the community has. Why? They're part of the community. See, our health issues, though I believe in genetics, genetics loads a gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. And if a lot of times your church members has the same diseases that the community has because they're kinfolk, or they're the same community and they have the same lifestyles. They eat the same kind of food. Southern food where I live. And Southern food will kill you if you don't eat it right. They have the same lifestyle behaviors, like maybe they just don't do exercise. Versus when I go out to California, man, they're exercising, riding their bicycles and running and whatever, and they look a whole lot different in the airports and around town than they do in some of the places where I live, because they don't do exercise. And so find out what the needs are from your church members, and that may be a good need for other people in your community. How about your family? Your family, if they're from that community, their problems are probably the community problems, because it's usually a community issue. It may not be genetically predisposed. It might be East Tennessee predisposed, because I'm doing what the average East Tennessean's doing. Look at what your neighbors' needs are. You know your neighbors, hopefully. What are their health needs? What are their needs? And just start writing this stuff down. What are needs in the community? What are your friends' needs? What are your coworkers' needs? You find out that when you're at break time. They talk about the challenges they have. Do a survey. Go into your community and do a survey and say, we would like to do some health education. What areas might you have needs in? And you have options. It could be diabetes, blood pressure, stress, whatever it may be, weight loss, whatever. You go into the neighborhoods, go through the city, go to city leaders. I was at one church in Kernersville, North Carolina, and we were looking at this and saying, how can we meet our community? So our elders went to the mayor, the city mayor, and said, we were a decent sized church. We're about 400 and some members, and we had all kinds of occupations in that church. So we had a lot of different expertises. And went to the mayor and said, our church would like to do more in the community. What needs do you have? Mayor should know what the needs are in the community. Even if it's just raking leaves for the little old ladies' homes who don't have a husband. That's something you can do. That's a start. And that's what we did. And the thing is you never do a survey and don't do something. Or you lost respect. You never do an employee survey and then don't do anything, or they'll never believe you again. You did a survey, you told me you were going to meet our needs, and then you didn't do anything. You lost their respect. It's better not to even do it. We went to the mayor. We said, Mayor, what do you need? He told us. We then the elders came back, said, here's the needs. What can we do based on our expertise? That's not a lot to rake yards. We went out and raked yards. And there's a few other things that we did. The mayor was very happy because we listened to him. We went to him. University of Tennessee, back in the 1950s, when my dad went to University of Tennessee and took agriculture, they taught them, when you go into a community, a farm community in Tennessee, you go and you move in, you don't go in and build a real big barn to start out. You don't come in with a brand new pickup truck. And you for sure don't come in with a brand new tractor, because you're trying to show everybody else up. You go in with a used pickup truck, even if you have to buy a used pickup truck. You go in with an old used tractor and start out with what you got, barn-wise. Build on it. And then as you make friends with the neighbors in the community, after a while you say, you go down to the local store and you rub arms and shoulders and talk to them. And you go to them and say, who do you use for fertilizer? Who do you use for your tractor work? And then you go to them and you say, listen, I really need to upgrade my tractor. Can you recommend a tractor? You just made a friend. And then finally you go down the road and I really need to upgrade my pickup truck. What do you recommend? And you may not like Fords, but you better get a Ford if that community's Fords. I'm serious. It's true, at least in East Tennessee. And then you build you a barn. And then they say, well, a man's made something of himself. He listened to us. You see the psychology? That may not be the psychology here. But what is the psychology where you live? And it's not to play people. It's what's reality. It's reality. And so you go to your business leaders and say, what do you need? What do you go? You go to your elected people and say, what do you need? Because why? Not to do smoothies, because you want to point their employees to Christ. You want to point the community to Christ, and you want to be the most effective. You're not playing games here. We don't play games in God's work. Yes?
Yeah, it's really true what you're saying, because I remember when I was doing the Bible work at my church, and I would go to different people's homes, and a lot of times, Minnesota has a lot of elderly people, and they have so much knowledge, and they just want to talk. They just want to talk and talk and talk, and sometimes I would sit with people just talking, and we would speak on spiritual topics, but they want to express themselves in everything, because there's not a lot of people around them. And I find myself, I enjoy speaking to elderly people because they have a lot of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So I've interacted with so many of them in my community and outside of the community, and they love just the interaction of having someone come in to listen and
It's true.
really hear what they have to say. And whenever I'm in town and they see me, always reaching out to me, because
Sure.
they remember I was willing to come in regularly, sit with them, talk, and have conversation. And no matter where I go, they'll always see me and remember me.
Sure.
And I don't, believe me, I'm a stranger because there's not many black people in the area. But they remember me because I will come in, friendly, respectful, sit with them, we interact, we talk, and I would go back again. They appreciate that. So it is true to know exactly what your neighborhood and your community is like.
Yes. And again, I do not know your community. I do not know it. But I can tell you what my community is. If you move into my community and you do somebody wrong, you've done it for good. But not just with that person, with their whole family and with their friends. And it's over. But if you've done somebody good, then they're your friend. And their family is your friend. And their friends are your friend. Now, is there an investment in this? Yes. Down the road, when it comes that these Seventh-day Adventists are bad people, no, I know this man. He listened to me. He's not bad. I know him. I personally know him. He is not bad. And they will stand up for you because now you are part of them because they trusted you. At least that's how it is where I am. And so, yes, sitting, talking, taking the time, it's the right thing to do, but also God will, I believe, pay us with that in the future. Examples of local needs. Our church does how-to classes, and they work very well. We do how-to classes. It might be a how-to class on how to bake bread. Just basic. Do you know how many young women don't know how to bake bread? Do you know how many old women don't know how to bake bread? And people want to know how to make bread. And then we've even done artisan bread making. That's, I guess, just highfalutin bread. But people came to it because they wanted to learn how to make artisan bread. The biggest class in our community is agriculture. We've done classes on how to do soil analysis, do a more in-depth soil analysis than what the local ag agent will do, and we can even find a more effective way to amend the soil through a more greater volume of nutrients that we assess, and then how to amend that soil. I was sitting in a class one day, and it was a multiple class. So we went to learn how to take a soil assessment out there, and then we shipped it off. The results came back, and now the class was how to read this and know what chemicals to use that were healthy chemicals to amend the soil. And so, the room is full, a huge dining room, and it's full of people from the local community. There's a fellow sitting with a man who's explaining it, showing us, checking our work. I'm next in line, and there's a lady sitting right here. Excuse me. And she leans over to me. She's in her 50s. And she leans over to me, and she tells me in my ear, "You know what you're doing, don't you?" I said, "Ma'am, pardon?" She says, "You know what you're doing, don't you?" I said, "What do you mean?" I knew what she meant. She knows, "You know what you're doing, don't you?" I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "I was raised up here in Greene County. I go to the local Baptist church. I've never set foot in this church, never had intentions to set my foot in this church, and you got me in here. You know what you're doing, don't you?" We did, and that was the intent. One of our church members is a coin collector. And this man has all kinds of coins. And so we did a coin collection for youth in the community. He's also a stamp collector. And so we did a stamp collection class for youth in the community. He gave them some of his coins. He gave them some of his stamps. We have some of our ladies that do knitting, sewing, all kinds of different crafts. We've had those classes. The pastor that just left is a photographer, a very, very good photographer. And he would do photography classes. And boy, that was popular. People in the community would come in and take his photography classes. And he was an excellent photographer, or is, but he's moved away. We had, now we say of our abilities, but sometimes it might be good to ask locals to help out. Like we had a class in irrigation, garden irrigation. Well, there's a man in the community, he's not a member of our church, but we had him come in and teach a class on garden irrigation. So now the community is seeing that we're not just us teaching the class, we're even having part of them teach the class. That meant a lot to them. And it meant a lot to him that he could come in to this large church. We've got, well, our church has definitely gone down in size. We used to have 700 and something members. We're a lot less now because the hospital ran away. It closed. So we lost a lot of those medical people who worked in the hospital. So we're not as big. We're still decent size. But this was when the hospital was still there that we did that class. And people, boy, they asked me to go over to their big church to teach a class. We've done it on pruning. We've done it on how to do, how to take and, what is it when you take another tree and grafting. We did a grafting class. And then gave people their grafts, ability to do their grafting. They could take it home and do their own grafting. We're getting ready to do one when I get back. It will be on canning. That's a big one. We do canning classes in the fall. We do a class, also we do dehydration, how to dehydrate. Just all kinds of classes. And I even teach one in cooking. It's how to make smoothies. I can teach that one. And so local people come in and I teach that class. You could also do one on small engine repair. I think I may have had some cooking, canning, gardening, small engine repair. Now, that's tough to get. If you've got a lawnmower or a chainsaw, it can take sometimes 1 to 2 months to get it repaired in my local community because there is so much need for it. And if you can teach a basic class on how to fix a lawnmower or a chainsaw, or maybe mechanic. You may have a mechanic in your church, or you may be a mechanic, and you can teach just general maintenance on a vehicle. You might be able to teach crafts. We have a lady in our church who is a banker, and she's a branch manager. She comes in and she teaches classes on how to do family budgeting. And she's the local banker in town, so they have respect for her. And so she teaches a class. I even had the local funeral home come in and teach, which is next door to the church, and teach how to prepare for someone's passing. They taught us something interesting. One of the members said, "What's the bare minimum you have to do?" One of the people said, "What's the bare minimum?" And they said, "Okay, here's the state law. You have to have a death certificate. So a doctor has to pronounce them dead. So you have to have a signed death certificate from the doctor. Number 2, you have to bury them at least in a sheet. You cannot bury them naked. You don't have to use a vault. It's the cemetery that requires the vault. You can make a board box if you want to. You can put them in that box, but you at least have to have a sheet around them." And this is what they said: because Christ was buried in a sheet. Isn't that interesting? The third thing you have to do is you have to put a fence around where you bury them to identify it as a private cemetery. Number 4, you have to go down to the courthouse and register your private cemetery. You don't even have to go to the funeral home. You don't have to have them embalmed. You can do it. Tennessee state specific. These people were interested in that. Yeah, something simple. But, I mean, they could have a highfalutin funeral and pay $10,000, $12,000. Or they could do it based on what their finances could do. That was folks enjoyed that class. It could be simple plumbing. You may have single women who have no idea. I had a guy who worked for me down in West Palm Beach. He was a pharmacist. He had he had 4 tools at his house. He had a hammer, and it was a little one, in order to knock in nails to hang pictures for his wife. He had a flathead, he had a Phillips screwdriver, and he had a pair of pliers. He had no mechanical abilities. He was a good pharmacist. He taught at Rutgers. He taught pharmacy at Rutgers. But he had no idea basic taking care of the house. You could do a simple plumbing class, a simple whatever class. But Walt, I thought you said medical missionary. In this class that you're teaching simple plumbing, you might find out this guy has high blood pressure. You know, we got a class we're going to do in high blood pressure. Now, it's also good when you do these classes to have the preacher come or your lay preacher come. Because when you do the classes, you have a handout you give at the end. You always get their phone number and their email and that kind of thing. Because, see, when we do classes, we now have this database of all these people over these years who've come to how-to classes. And we send out, we're having another how-to class, just to let you know if you'd like to come. No pressure, just want to let you know you've come before. And so they can see that we're active, involved, interested, and we're doing things for the local community, that we're not some weird people out there, you know, killing goats. And but we have a questionnaire, and we have them fill out this questionnaire, and it's what kind of classes would you like next? It's other courses that we would like to do in the future. What's the interest? There is no need in doing a class if nobody's going to show up. You're there to point the sin sick soul to Christ. And empty pews don't do that. And so you find out what their interest is, and based on their interest, you have more classes. Well, about 3/4 of the way down through that checkoff sheet, what they're interested in, 1, 2, 3, most important, whatever. Have them grade it, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. About right in here, you have a class, one on how Jesus healed in the Bible. Now what do you have? A Bible study. And it works. It really does. It's not a bull in a china closet. It's just being a country boy walk across out there talking to local country people and sharing with them what I know, or someone else sharing them what you know. And whatever your strengths are, that's what you teach. Do good at it. We opened a deli back several years ago at the store, and we were wanting to do it, but I'd run in healthcare. I'd run big dietary departments or whatever, but I'd never run something like that. And so I was trying to figure it out and what I need to do, and God's really good. This guy comes who's a customer of mine, and he said, "Walt, I'm retiring." Well, he's the general manager for Cracker Barrel. He says, "I'm retiring." And he said, you had mentioned you wanted to start at a deli. Do you mind if I help you start that deli? Oh, sure. Absolutely. Because he knew what to do. That was his profession. And he was good at it. So he comes in and he says, "What do you want to serve?" So I told him everything we wanted to do. He goes, "Nope. Let's make it easy." He says, "What if we just do smoothies?" Everybody likes smoothies, he said. Don't do your haystacks and your wraps and your soups and all that you want to do, which we eventually put in. He said, let's do smoothies first. And we're only going to do 3. Oh, but I've got all other kinds of recipes. Nope, we're doing 3. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it right. And he says, we're going to make it pop. It's got to look good. It's got to present well. It's got to be the best you can taste. And so we gave him recipes, and then he worked with those recipes to make them pop. Then we opened the deli with 3 smoothies. And boy, it was a hit. And from there, we went to 4, to 5, to 14 different types of smoothies. And then we started adding this wrap, then this wrap, then this wrap. And then we started adding this soup, and this soup, and this soup, and this pizza, and this haystack, and I mean, all kinds of things. But it started with 3 smoothies. Make it look good and make it pop. And you don't show up just to show up. You want to go in there with intent to point the sin-sick soul to Christ. Not a bull in a china closet. But you're going in there to smile, to be friendly, to be nice. Now, I don't know if people are nice around here. Y'all are nice. But where I am, we have southern hospitalities, but we've got a lot of move-ins. And move-ins have brought in different cultures. And it's contagious to our community. We have a lot of people out of the inner cities. New York City, Chicago, Detroit, LA, that are moving to our area. And they're not as friendly. So you want them people too, don't you? And so if you go in there and you're kind and you're gentle and you're meek, you're not a know-it-all, they might be interested in what you have, because that sure is a whole lot nicer than where they come from. Examples of local needs, health concerns. Now you're trying to figure out what kind of classes you can do. Everybody's got stress. When I went to Rwanda, nobody had stress. I didn't understand it. I always go somewhere with stress. And I was discussing this with the director of the program that's running the program now. And I just talked to him last week. And I said, it's very interesting. When I first came to Kigali, and I did the first class, I was very surprised that nobody had stress. Either 0 or 1. But I found as I've come back, as I have got to know the people, they have major stress. Would you be stressed if your wife and 8 children had been slaughtered by the Hutus? But when I asked the president of the conference if he's stressed, he goes, no. It's because President Paul told people, get over it. Now, I like President Paul. He's a good guy. I mean, he's taking Rwanda out of what happened. And that was not easy, to have over 1 million of your people slaughtered in 100 days. And to have 2 different cultures, 2 different tribes. And tribal wars have been there for many, many years. And still today. And he's done a great job of moving forward, but there's still deep stuff down inside. But see, he's told them to go forward. And to don't think about that, go forward. But it really, down deep, they think about it. And when I first went there, they told me the typical street, I'm doing great. But once I got to know them, and they trusted me, no, they're having some big problems. Would you have big problems if your family was totally slaughtered? One lady who works with us there, her mother and all of her children were slaughtered. She has a good face, but when you talk to her and she gets to know you, she still misses all of her kids. Still misses her mother. And not that they just died, they were slaughtered, killed, slaughtered. I mean, meanly slaughtered because the Hutus hated the Tutsis. They wanted pain. And when you go into the Genocide Museum, you see how cruel the slaughter was. I can't talk about it here, but it was terrible. And there's hurt knowing that's how your family was killed. Not in a car wreck, but that happened. And so there's stress out there. And stress is a class that you can teach. Stop smoking classes. I started teaching that back in 1978. I was in high school when I started teaching these classes. No, we don't do the classes like we used to. It's more one-on-one today than when I started teaching them. We were doing 30 to 50, even 60 people in the classes. But we don't have that anymore, and that's great. You know, there's not as many smokers, still smokers, but nothing like there was back in the 70s when I started. Diabetes, blood pressure classes, cholesterol, weight loss, digestion. These can be individual classes, or they can be like what Kigali English Church is doing, is they do lifestyle classes. Lifestyle classes, we do 4 a year, maybe now 5 a year. No, we're doing 5 of them a year. And it's a 2-week program from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. 7 days a week. They come in on Sabbath morning, we have Sabbath school. We have church. In the afternoon, we let them off. We have dinner with them, but we let them off to go. But it's 5 days a week. Or, as we've done at Kigali, we've done night classes, and we've done both at the same time. Done a day class, 8 to 5, and then do a 6 to 9, where people come in the night. And we do classes every night of the week for 14 days. Similar program, but just not, obviously we're not doing massage, we're not doing hydrotherapy, we're not doing the walks, we're not feeding them, we're not doing the cooking classes, but we're giving the information and encourage and teaching them how to do that at home on their own. And I do these. Some of y'all have watched have you seen any of the ones I do January through March? I do them a live class every day for the month of January, and then twice a week in February and March. And so you can literally do it online, and that happened with COVID. People wouldn't come in, so I started doing it that way. There's all kinds of ways you can do it. You can do, churches have been doing 5-day programs and breathe-free programs for years. Whether you do it individual or you do actually a lifestyle program. Let's go back to those smoothies. Have you ever heard of a block party? Y'all ever heard of a block party? Yeah. Okay. All you have to do is go out in your pickup truck, drop your tailgate, and who's watched the movie Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead? Okay. Did he have electricity in his car to run that blender? Juicer? He had electricity, but it was a little thing you plug into, inverter. Well, in some cultures, you could literally go and say, I'm going to have a smoothie class out here at this location, drop your tailgate, and that would literally work in some communities. And you could do a smoothie class right there where everybody comes out in the neighborhood in a subdivision, and you're doing a class. And it doesn't even have to be in the house. Just wash your truck bed off real good before you do it. But you can ask God. Every community is different. I'm just telling you what we do in our community. But your community, do what your community does. Because my community likes doing what my community likes to do. And as I've shared before, the East Tennessee mind is the hardest mind, according to UT, to change in America. It's the Appalachian, it's the Scottish and Irish people. And they're very difficult to change their minds. So you work within the scope of what you have. You could go into public schools. I go into a public school. I'll be in a public school this Tuesday teaching. I go in every month to this one public school, and then I go to other public schools in the county. Not every month, but I go into them, and I teach all kinds of classes. I teach the 8 laws of health, and then I do cooking classes. Every month I take something for the kids to eat, to try to change their palate. I remember there was this one little boy. He'd never seen a pineapple before. And he had no interest in tasting that thing. That thing looked weird. So I took the top off and I cut it open. I ain't going to try that. And the kid may have been like 5th grade, 4th grade, something like that. And so the teacher came over, Angie, and she says, come on. And it took her about 2 minutes to convince this little boy to try this piece of pineapple. And finally she convinced him to try this piece of pineapple. He'd never had pineapple like that before. Maybe it happened somewhere, but he'd never had it. He's just up in the mountain, old country mountain boy, Appalachian boy. And so finally Angie convinces him to put that piece in his mouth and try it. He could spit it out if he wanted to, but put it in his mouth. Wow, that's good. He'd never tasted it before. I've taken avocados before. Now, y'all from the Caribbean cannot imagine not having an avocado. But these kids, many of them up in the mountains, had never had avocados. Didn't even know what they were. And I'd say, well, have you ever gone to a Mexican store and had guacamole? No. And to make guacamole and let them taste it. You know, to change that palate from what they just normally eat. The junk food, unfortunately, today. And let me share this. I got this idea because next month, a month from this coming Wednesday, I will be in the school that I'm going to be in Tuesday this week, teaching fire prevention. And I go in there every year and I spend 30 minutes with the classes. And I spend 30 minutes teaching them fire prevention, and then I spend 30 minutes outside letting them spray the fire hoses. And that's just so cool to both the boys and the girls to have an 1 3/4 fire hose, open it up and let it spray that big old fire hose that the firemen use. And my firefighters are there, right there with them, spraying the hose with them. And every year at the beginning of the class, I quiz them on what I taught them last year. A year ago, for only 30 minutes in that class. And they get it. Every year, 100%. They remember what I taught last year. And I got to thinking, if I can teach a class to kids, and the United States Fire Administration says that we have less structure fires today than we did back when I started years ago because of 2 reasons. One is, yes, there's better wiring codes. But the second major reason is because we go into the school systems in October, and I'm sure they do that here. Do they? They go into the school systems? The fire departments go in October. That's Fire Prevention Month. That education that your kids get will then increase fire prevention by the time they become parents and have their own homes. And it just keeps improving because as we learn, an example, we teach stop, drop, and roll. The fire marshal, state fire marshal, sent out a letter and said, please teach the children to not stop, drop, and roll in the house when they're trying to get out. See, there's a miscommunication there. We teach kids, if you catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll. Well, we were having problems with kids thinking if there's a house fire, you stop, drop, and roll. No, get out of the house. They were stop, drop, and roll, and they weren't on fire. And so we continually improve. So now I teach the kids that's only if you're on fire. And new things we teach them all the time. Now, used to my whole 30 minutes was on structure fires Now, half of it is on structure fire, and now half of it is on wildland mitigation. Wildland mitigation, you've heard of the Gatlinburg fires a couple years ago? Well, wildland fires are real, and we're up in the mountains, and we don't cut back 100 feet from our houses and clear it all. Trees are over the house, and we live amongst the forest. And if there's a wildland fire, it's going to eat the house. But if you cut back, at least get those fuels and ladder fuels, the ground fuels, the ladder fuels, and cut some of those trees back, you'll have a better possibility of saving your house from a wildland fire. And so now I teach wildland mitigation, how to mitigate, prevent your property from catching on fire from a wildland fire. And so we're learning all the times. And so I thought, what if I take that philosophy and use it for health? And now I go in there every month and teach health. I go into Walmart, and parents will come to me, and the kids will say, that's him, that's him, that's him. And they'll go, we can't buy the same food we were buying anymore. Because they want to eat this versus this. One little boy is in 4th grade. He came to class one morning and he said, he waved his hand. He goes, the other day I was in Grandma's, because a lot of grandparents raise kids because the parents may be in jail because of drugs are huge today. I'm sure it's here also. And so grandparents, even great-grandparents, because the children and their grandparents are in jail, so the great-grandparents are having to raise the kids. At least keep them in the family. It's sad. And so he comes in, he waves his hand, he says, he was sitting right here, he goes, guess what I did? I said, what? He goes, I was in the store with Granny the other day, and she was buying, and he says, I was riding in the cart, and she bought, I felt my phone there, and she bought some white bread, and he says, I caught her not looking. I climbed out of the cart. He says, I stole that white bread, took it over, stuck it back on the shelf, and got me some brown bread, stuck it in the cart. She didn't even know. But the parents at the store talk about them not getting the soft drinks, wanting to drink water. So it's having effect. When I went to this one school, in this one school, the school has around 420, 430 students. And the principal told me that over 300 of those children's parents and probably grandparents are drawers. Now, you know what a drawer is? No, they draw a check. They're unemployed. They're on welfare. They're drawers. And it don't matter what race. It don't matter. All races. And unfortunately, the community has learned to draw. And it's a lot easier to get a mailbox check. And I would go into the class and I'd say to the kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they just look at me like, what do you mean? Yeah. And someone would say, just get a check. They just tell you. Because they saw their parents and grandparents do it. They were going to be third generations. That furrow was deep. And every month I'd go in and I'd say, come on, what do you want to be? You want to be a doctor? You want to be a nurse? And finally, they started saying, yeah, I want to be an astronaut. That's okay. I want to be president. That's okay. Kindergarten, 1st grade, I want to be Superman. That's okay. Be something. And every month I would go in, and I was there, go in that school year after year after year. What do you want to be? What do you want to be? And finally, kids got it. They were coming up with occupations. 2 years ago, I had this little girl come in. I say little girl. She's in college now. She comes in, little black girl, and I remember her from class. Pretty little girl, smart little girl, always interactive little girl, great little girl. And I remember she would say she wanted to be a nurse. And she came in and she says, do you remember me? I says, yeah, I remember you. I could remember her. And she says, I just want to come in and tell you thank you. I'm starting nursing school. Isn't that cool? That's what we can do going in there. And in the state of Tennessee, I can now teach In God We Trust because it's part of the Tennessee law. There's a sign in a public place that says In God We Trust, K through 12. That's state law. It's that way in North Dakota, I'm told. It's that way in Kentucky, in Florida, in Georgia, in various states. So I teach. When I go in and I teach health, I'm teaching In God We Trust. I'm teaching about prayer. I'm teaching about God blessing those modalities that I'm teaching the kids. And so you do it. See how it goes together? Now, before I could do that, I would say to the kids, pull out your money. Because I could not say, In God We Trust. It was illegal. But when the legislature made it a state law, it's wide open. The teachers are glad where I am. They were scared at first and I had to quit. And so I just said, pull out your money. What's on every quarter, penny, dollar? What's on that quarter, on every one of those, doctors have found it improves your health. And I would talk about what the money says can do this, and what the money says can do this. But I couldn't say those words. Now I can. Yes?
You know, it's interesting. It's true what you say because whatever we truly believe in, we ought to live that life. You know, at the gym I went to, I met this gentleman, and we started just having casual conversation. And I would always talk about, you know, my belief and so forth. And so we continued talking. Come to find out, he is a special agent, FBI,
Wow.
in the area, you know. And he said he was assigned here from California, and because there's a lot of activities in this area. So as we continued talking and becoming friendly, we'd always meet at the same time, and he would always, you know, talk to me. He said to me, you know, I would love to have you come in and talk to the kids at a certain location in Cass Lake, to the kids, because of your positive attitude. And he said I would make whatever arrangement is necessary to have you come in. But that was right before COVID, so a lot of things were interrupted. But it's because of the communications,
Yes.
the fact that he saw a positive
Yes.
mindset and a godly spirit when I always interact. And
Sure.
everyone at the gym, all the state police officers I interact with, know me because I don't change who I am.
Yes.
I stay my godly nature and my positive
Yes.
self, and they know that. So he says to me, I would love to have you be someone who would champion and talk to these young people because they have such a low mindset about themselves
Yes.
that it would be nice to have someone who come in, someone that they can identify with, even though I'm not native, but yet still he could say they can identify with me.
Sure.
You know, and I said, whenever you want, you know, you have my contact. Whenever you need me, I will certainly be willing to do so. And it's because, you know, if you really have Christ, you have to have Christ all the time.
You're different. A good different.
So
It's true.
I identify what you're saying about
Yeah.
kids being able to talk to them.
Yes. I could tell you all kinds of stories of the school. But going into the school system is a program that may be something you could do. And it doesn't have to, if it's your church, our church does that now. When the hospital left, we're now doing all kinds of stuff. But in my little ministry, I just go out and do it. You can just go out and ask to do it. And just do it. You don't have to be part of this organization. And you don't have to worry about, I need this fame or that fame. You ain't working for them. You're just working for God. We are just that person. When God says scalpel, you hand him the scalpel. That's all we're doing. We're just doing what he says to do. But how we do it is so important. If we're mean as a striped snake, if we're irritable, then we need to stay home that day. Because we need to present Christ's love. Because we are his ambassadors. We're that mirror that people look at and determine, do they want him or not? Through, do they want what you have? I noticed when I got here, Walter put something. I got here Friday, and before Walter left the office, he punched in. One of the local Baptist churches has asked me to come speak at 1 o'clock one Sunday afternoon, and on health. I don't know what it is. He put it on there, and I'll find out when I get back. But you can go in and do health classes at churches. You can go to that Baptist church. You can go to that Lutheran church. Y'all got a lot of Lutherans here. And go to those churches and just teach how. I do a class on how to get to know Christ better through lifestyle. Now, does not everybody want to get to know Christ better? Does not the Lutherans want to know how to get to know Christ better? Go in there and teach them through those laws of health how nutrition helps them to get to know Christ better. How water helps them to get to know Christ better. Why? It all affects the brain. And having a more effective brain. And so you can look at the science behind what makes the brain sharper. And you can discern better. You can discern the Word of God. You can hear the Holy Spirit better. And you can get to know Christ better. And none of that is going to be at all offensive. Thank you. I had a friend. He's passed away. And he had something called chainsaw ministry. He had retired. He was a medical doctor. He got tired of being a medical doctor and went to SMC, and he taught math. And became a math instructor at the college at that time. Well, he had retired, moved up in the mountains of North Carolina, and he did a lot of gardening outside, but he had a chainsaw ministry. Anytime he heard a chainsaw, and up in the mountains we can hear chainsaws, and things echo, and so he'd hear a chainsaw start up and start working. He'd tell his wife, "I gotta go." Grab his chainsaw, it was always ready, put it in the car, take off, find where that chainsaw was working, and he'd get there and start cutting wood with that neighbor. It was his chainsaw ministry. It can go to businesses. I've gone to all kinds of businesses, from a Ford dealership, talking to their employees, to all kinds of businesses. You've ever heard of Bush Beans? Well, that's right where I am. That's where Bush Beans is produced. And I've been into Bush Beans many times, teaching classes on health. And then there's other businesses out there that I go to and teach lifestyle health. HR is going to be crazy not to want healthy employees. Right? They're going to have a lower experience mod for workers' comp, because a healthier employee is less prone to get hurt. They're going to have a better experience mod. They're going to have lower workers' comp insurance cost. They're going to have less costs on insurance, health insurance, because they have healthier employees. If you can help them to reverse that diabetes, reverse that hypertension, to lose weight, to whatever, then they're not going to have those costs. A healthy employee comes to work. You don't have overtime. You don't have to have an agency come in. And so an HR person who is a good HR person is going to want you coming in and teaching classes on health. Clubs and organizations. Do y'all have Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, Ruatan Club, Lions, Elk? Yeah. I go to those and I teach. And you don't have to do those long. They don't want you to spend a long time. They got 15, 20 minutes, they got to get back to the office. Just do a quick class. Community Service Center. Remember when we had Dorcases? Our church has a community service center. I mean, we send out, I forgot how many tons of food a year out of the community service center. We do I don't know how much clothes. It's a huge building. Our community service center it's bigger than this building. That's how big it's gotten. That we're able to, and we open one day a week. And then, I mean, it's just crowded with local people coming in and getting things. Health food store. If you don't have a health food store in the area, or if you can do another one, a member could do a health food store, could do a restaurant or a deli. You may have someone that could open a spa, do massage, hydrotherapy. A lifestyle clinic. You get a doc come into town and be a lifestyle doc. And we talked before how in God's plan, you've got the church, you've got the member, and you have the lifestyle, the doc's office, you got the restaurant, you got the health food store and the school, and then you've got the agriculture. And you're here working over at, what's a factory around here? You got a cabinet place here, right? What's the name of it? What? Okay. Oh, hang on just a sec. Okay. That's not coming. We had a fire call, but dispatch didn't put what it was. Okay, say central boiler. Okay, so let's say central boilers, and you're working over at central boilers, and you work with old Henry, and Henry has high blood pressure, and you're eating with him one day, and you say, listen, how'd you like to go out for lunch instead of here? We'll go out. And I know a great place you can go eat. And you know where you go. You go to the restaurant of the church member. And boy, that's a really good food. Where do you get food like that? Well, on the way back to Central Boiler, you come over here and you run by the health food store. Well, you can get that food over there at that health food store. And boy, I wish I'd get healthy. I got bad blood pressure. And you say, well, I know this clinic over here. And that old doc there, he works with blood pressure, and he helps people get off their medicines and reverse their blood pressure. Well, my doctor said I'd have to be on blood pressure meds the rest of my life, thinking everything I can do. Yeah. Well, come check this guy and tell him I sent you. Well, then what happens is you go over to the clinic over here, and you say, listen, I got a program I can help you with, but let's see what the doc says. Well, you already got this thing worked out with the doc. And he goes in there, yep, he's got high blood pressure, and he says, well, you can go over to Henry, and Henry will help you with it. He sends back. It's like when you have a broken leg, or say a broken hip, you got a broken hip, and you go to the orthopedist. Does the orthopedist, after the surgery, does he do physical therapy? No, he really, a lot of times doesn't even know a lot about physical therapy. That physical therapist is a PhD in physical therapy. They got a PhD in physical therapy today. They know a lot about physical therapy. And so he refers over to the physical therapist. Now, yes, he has to sign those orders. And yes, he has to follow up and re-sign for reimbursement or whatever for you to get physical therapy to get reimbursed through your insurance. But he sends them over. So that doc then says, yeah, your friend has the plan. And then you help that person one-on-one with that lifestyle program. And teaching them how to do the Duke diet, how to do exercise, how to get your sleep at night, and the various things to get rid of high blood pressure. Because you're a medical missionary, you know this stuff. But they're going back just to be checked by the doc, and the doc can then, the church member, can help them come off their meds. But then you say, you know what? We got some classes coming up. They teach how to make smoothies. It's real simple. And we're going to have it over here at the church. And they come to smoothie classes. They may come to some other classes on how to make healthy Thanksgiving dinners, how to make healthy Christmas dinners. you know, it's that time of year. Folks are thinking, and they'd like to have some healthier food, and you can have some classes there. And the church is the center of the program. And it could go on and on and on. I share with that. But God's system works. Why? Because He said to do it. It's going to work. So if you have a lifestyle clinic, and in that clinic you could have a medical doctor, you could maybe even have you had a dentist move in, you had a massage therapist there. If you didn't have, you could have a physical therapist, respiratory therapist, whatever. It doesn't have to be just the physician. If you're in an area large enough that could do that. A community-supported agriculture, a CSA. Is that done here much? CSAs?
They took off a few years ago, but they died back.
Have they? They were probably bigger in our area a few years ago, but they're still going. And that's a possibility. Our church is just starting a local garden. Back a few years ago, when other people were there, they said, "Oh no, we don't want a garden. It might get weeds. And if they don't pick their weeds, it wouldn't look nice." Well, those people left when the hospital left. And we're starting a local garden. And the community come in, and let's say you live in a trailer park. I was talking to a lady the other day, a doctor's wife brought a lady in, and this lady lives in a trailer park. And I told her, "You need good nutrition." "Well, I can't afford it." "Can you grow a garden?" "Yeah, but I don't have a place to grow it." And I said, "Well," and I took her out back. Someone had given me a raised bed. A guy at the State Farm, he'd made his girlfriend a raised bed. She didn't like it. And he says, "You want this raised bed?" I said, "Sure, I'll take it. Some good wood. I can put some of my herbs in it up at the house." So I carried it over, and I hadn't put it in the truck to take up the house yet. It's not big. And so I took this lady. She's Spanish, doesn't speak English, so the doctor's wife, she's Spanish, and so she translated. And I said, "Could your husband make something like this?" "No problem." I mean, Mexicans are great at construction. "No problem." And so I said, could you do these and put a few of these this size or a little bigger around your trailer?" "Yeah, I could do that." Well, in Spanish, she's, translating. And I said, "You could take," I said, "ask her if she likes tomatoes." "Of course, they like salsa." And yes, she likes tomatoes. I said, "Have your husband get some 5-gallon buckets. And you don't need a whole mess of tomatoes. Just get you a couple buckets and grow you some tomatoes." But there's people who don't have the property or the land to put a garden. They may be in an area that you just can't put a garden there. So our church has opened it up. Come on over and grow in our garden. But it's also, you can be with other people. When we can get out there, work with them, talk to them about their needs. And it's a way you can work with these people. Senior needs. "Well, Walt, I just don't have time. I'm so busy." Well, if you're busy, do what you got to do. But if you have some extra time, this is another area, like what you were talking about. Just sit there and talk to them. They're lonely. When I was a boy, we would, up on the farm, up on the mountain, my grandfather would go to the local little store, and it was a country store, and it had one of them potbelly stoves. The men would hang out and talk and whatever. And I went by that area not long ago, and going from one place to another. And it was early morning. The sun was just starting to come through. And I stopped in to go to the bathroom and was walking in. There men were sitting on the porch. Well, they were my dad's age. and the generations had moved on, and their grandfathers had died, and their fathers had died, and now they're retired, and they're sitting on the porch. and talking about everything going on. Women got their beauty shops and fellas got their other places. And they just want to talk. And I have folks that just come in and sit down in the chair at the store and you know, folks, you know, at first when I got some new staff, does he need something? No. He's just sitting there. He'll talk to me when someone's not here. And they're lonely. Their spouse died. Or maybe they're getting out of the house to get away from their spouse. You know, whatever it might be. But they need someone to talk to. Seniors have needs. It may be medical missionary needs that you can help them with some health issues. It might mean they need their yard raked or mowed or cut some limbs out. They can't do it anymore and they don't have the money to do it. Just run by there and mow the yard for them. My son-in-law, he's from Shakopee. Am I saying it right? Shakopee? Minnesota? Yes. He's from there. And he has a very good lawn business and down where we are. And there's times he has, you know, some extra time, and there might be a church member or an older person he knows. He doesn't take no time in that zero to hop off and it's done. He gets back on, heads to that another yard, and God's blessed him in his lawnmowing business, and he's doing quite well. And he has various ones that he takes care of these elderly people in the church or elderly people in the neighborhood. Is that important? It is. They may need a ride to the doctor. Well, what kind of talking could you have going to the doctor? You think you could talk about health? And you're not telling them, you know, you need to stop taking that blood pressure medicine. You need to stop taking that diabetes medicine. Just talk to them about healthy lifestyle, and boom, the doctor starts cutting back on their medicine just because they're now doing this, this, and this that you're teaching them. They need help going shopping. They need some health and house care. Or maybe they just want something read to them. Do you know any books that might be good to read to them? Yeah, especially that one in black. That's a good book. And if they're older, they probably went to church when they were younger. Make a plan. What did God impress you to do? What are your strengths? What are the needs? Study, study, study. Always learn. No more today than yesterday. No more tomorrow than today. There's a program that I listen to. It's called ReachMD. ReachMD. It's a program for physicians, and for them to get continuing education. And I go in there and I listen to it. Have you ever listened to ReachMD? It's a continuing education for physicians, and you can go on what's it called? TuneIn Radio. Have you ever heard of TuneIn Radio? TuneIn Radio, I listen to, I can listen to 3ABN and BBN and things like that. Well, it's where you listen to streaming from other radio programs, TV programs, and I can listen to ReachMD on there, and it's free. And to get on the computer, you have to put in your medical license, but to listen streaming, you don't. And so they have all kinds of cutting-edge new stuff out there. And I can learn what's new. And there's a lot of non-pharmaceutical stuff that's really new science that I learn a lot from. And ReachMD says, when you come out of medical school, if you do not do continuing education over that 3-year period, in 3 years, the knowledge you just graduated 3 years ago is obsolete. Would you agree with that? There's new stuff constantly coming out. And so there's a place called Battle Creek, Michigan. And there was a place that was called what? Battle Creek. In the late 70s, 1870s, they got a letter of discipline from God. It was called PH 100. Testimonies to the Physicians and Helpers of the Sanitarian. Who's read that? It's PH 100. Read that. Testimonies to the Physicians and Helpers of the Sanitarian. And God had Ellen White write a letter to Battle Creek, to John Harvey Kellogg, and to the rest of the staff. See, Battle Creek had this philosophy. This is just the way we do it around here. Have you ever met people that way? New ideas come, well, you may do that where you come from. This is how we do it here. And they got stagnant. They were stagnant in their learning. And you may think that continuous quality improvement, CQI, came from Deming, from Covey. Remember Deming and Covey? It didn't. It was in the 1870s at Battle Creek, Michigan. God told them, you got to do better today than yesterday and better tomorrow than today. And have you ever heard that the kitchen is to be a laboratory? That's where it came from, that letter. And where God told Battle Creek, no, constantly improve, improve, improve. This was like 77, 78. And in 1900, Kellogg listened to that. He changed. In 1990, in 1900, Mrs. White wrote that Kellogg was the best physician in the world because he listened to God's counsel. He took that letter of discipline and he corrected it. And so we got to study, study, study. There's new stuff coming out. There's new science coming out. And is it okay to see what Harvard says about physiology? Absolutely. Is it okay to see what, I'm always looking up what that little community hospital down the road in Rochester does. What Mayo does. Mayo does great science in lifestyle health. And so I look to see, and a person will call me, just before I left on Thursday, a person called me and I said, let me see what Mayo says. What are the side effects of this? What are the problems with this? Because they have the latest on what's the side effects of this or what happens here. And so I'll look it up. I'll put in the concern and I'll look up Mayo Clinic and boom, it has Mayo's latest information on that disease or that problem. So study, study, study. If possible, get a partner. How did Jesus send the disciples out? Yeah. And so people say, well, I just can't do it on my own. I'm kind of scared. We'll get you a partner. And the way it works is, Mary Lou will go with me. And when I don't fly, she goes with me. And so she'll be sitting over here usually somewhere. And I'll be speaking and I'll say something. And she'll raise her hand. And she'll say something. Oh, that's right. We work together all the time. I forgot to mention it. Or sometimes I'll say something. She said, you meant to say this, didn't you? And I go, oh, yeah, I said that. People go, yeah, that was wrong. Yes, she's right. So that partner can keep you in line. They can pray for when you're up there teaching how to make smoothies. If you don't have the church out there to do it with you, have you a partner. It might be your spouse. Ladies, it might be another lady. And y'all do cooking together. Whatever it is, but a partner, you can encourage each other, lift each other, and it's good to have a partner, God says. Start slow, but with quality. Why? Salvation's at hand. When we started the deli, we started slow, with quality. Well, to that fella from Cracker Barrel, business was at hand. But he didn't understand salvation's at hand. It is. If you go out there and do sloppy work, they're not interested in you saying, you need the God who made that work. You need quality and say, the man who made that work, he can help you in other things too. Do what God, the medical missionary director or the medical director tells you what to do. And people will come in and they'll say, well, what do I do? I don't know. They have cancer. Do I need to do chemotherapy? Do I need to do natural? I don't know. The lady came in from New York Times and she said, what do you tell people? Should they take the vaccine? I tell them, I don't know. Ask God what you need to do. If God says take the vaccine, take it. If he says don't take it, don't take it. I say, if God tells you He wants you to do chemotherapy, do chemotherapy. If He tells you not to do chemotherapy, don't do chemotherapy. If He tells you to do both of them, do what He tells you to do. You would not believe the hate mail that I got when that lady put that article in the New York Times. Even from this part of the country, from Washington State, from all over the U.S., I got these letters of hate telling me to die. Telling me to die. Because I just told them to do what God told you to do. And I did not tell them, I wasn't telling people not to take the vaccine. I was telling people, pray and ask God what you need to do. That's your answer. But because I did not assertively encourage these people, I needed to die. Insane where people are today. Insane. Go to the medical director. He's the medical director, God is, and ask him what to do. I wish to tell you that soon there'll be no work done in ministerial lines but medical missionary work. So I hope it's been helpful this morning. Looking at some things you can take a look at. We didn't get deep into how to structurally make the programs, but we mostly looked at, because of time, we looked at just overview, how to look at your talents, look at the needs, how to put those together, and how to put programs together. And it works, y'all. It does. And as what it says do. People come in and they say, well, I'll think about it. No, don't think about it. Do it. Just plumb do it. There were some questions. How's our time? What do we need to do time-wise? Take a break, okay? Yeah, okay. So let's take a break. Pray first, yes. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, to some it may seem simple, and to some it may seem a mountain to climb. Lord, teach us how to just start small. Just 3 smoothies. Simple. 1 + 1 + 1. You made it simple for us. It cannot be simple if you expected all of us to do it. I mean, it can't be hard if you expected all of us to do it. And so, Lord, help us to understand the simplicity of the medical missionary program. It doesn't have to be highfalutin. It doesn't have to be highfalutin words. It can be simple. And teach us the simple steps to help people first. And then as we learn, we can step it up and do more things. But Lord, help us to understand, for most, that is to point the sin-sick soul to Christ. That is not us doing it. For if we think it is us doing it, we'll fall and we'll bust our nose. It is not for our glory. It is not for the glory of reversing diabetes. Though doing well, their diabetes going away or whatever the problem, we can give that glory to you and point them to your Son. But Lord, we ask that you give us that desire, that hankering, that thirst, that hunger to obey your word and do medical missionary work. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.